The first sign of humanity's defiance came not as a declaration of war, but as a single obsidian vessel that materialized at the edge of the Veltar system without warning. No hyperspace ripples, no energy signatures. It simply was, as if the universe had decided to birth it from nothingness. Admiral Koreth Val stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's edge, his forearms crossed behind his chitinous back as he studied the tactical display. The hegemony's greatest fleet, 12,000 vessels strong, had assembled here to crush the human rebellion once and for all. Yet this lone ship, no larger than a frigate, had emerged from nowhere to face them. "Scan that vessel," Koreth Val commanded, his mandibles clicking with barely contained fury. "I want to know everything about it." Sensor operator Nextor's tentacles danced across her console before freezing. "Admiral, it's absorbing our scans. Every probe, every beam, it's drawing them in like a gravitational singularity." The black ship held position exactly 1 light minute away, its hull drinking in the light of the system's twin suns. No running lights, no heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions of any kind. It was a void in space, an absence of everything. "Communications," Koreth Val barked. "Demand their surrender." The reply came not through standard channels, but carved directly into their sensors, bypassing every security protocol the hegemony had developed over 3 millennia. "To the hegemony forces in the Veltar system, you have 30 minutes to withdraw beyond the heliopause. This is your only warning." Laughter rippled across the bridge, a sound like breaking glass from a dozen different species. Koreth Val himself bared his serrated teeth in what passed for amusement among his kind. 30 minutes, he repeated. 1 ship against 12,000. Have the humans finally descended into madness? But his amusement died as Tactical Officer Rim Geth's voice cracked with something approaching terror. "Admiral, the ship is powering something. Energy readings are impossible. It's drawing power from somewhere else. Not fusion, not antimatter, not even zero-point energy. It's pulling energy from the fabric of space-time itself." The black ship began to turn, a ponderous rotation that took nearly a full minute to complete. When it finished, its bow pointed directly at the heart of the hegemony fleet. Though no visible weapons were apparent, something in that orientation sent primal fear coursing through every crew member on every ship. "Sir," Nextor whispered, It's targeting us. All of us, simultaneously." Koreth Val stared at the tactical display where 12,000 ships, the pride of 17 worlds, the culmination of 1,000 years of military evolution, faced, a single black vessel no larger than a grain of sand by comparison. But something about that vessel made his ancient instincts scream warnings his rational mind couldn't process. "What kind of weapon system can target 12,000 ships at once?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral, but whatever it is." Rimgeth's voice trailed off as new readings flooded his display. "Sir, space-time is beginning to warp around that ship. Gravity is... Admiral, I think it's preparing to fire." The 30 minutes weren't up. They had been warned, given a chance to withdraw with dignity intact. But the hegemony had never retreated from primitives, had never shown weakness to species that should have been grateful for the gift of servitude. Koreth Val's pride sealed his fate with 4 simple words. "All ships, attack formation." The black ship's response was immediate and terrible. It locked on. The sensation was indescribable. 12,000 ships, 12,000 crews, all feeling the weight of something vast and predatory, focusing on them with surgical precision. It was like being examined by a cosmic intelligence that found them wanting, measured them for destruction with the cold calculus of inevitability. Admiral Koreth Val gripped his command throne, as reality itself seemed to shiver around them. The black ship hadn't moved, hadn't fired, hadn't even powered up visible weapons, yet every sensor on every ship screamed the same impossible message. Targeted, locked, acquired. "Evasive maneuvers," Koreth Val roared. Full scatter pattern! The fleet dispersed like startled insects, ships peeling away in all directions at maximum burn. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, and fighters, all fleeing from a single obsidian vessel that sat motionless in space like a patient executioner. But the lock held. Distance meant nothing. Speed meant nothing. Ships that dove behind planets, that fled to the system's edge, that tried to jump into hyperspace, all remained trapped in that cosmic crosshair. "Admiral!" Rimgeth's voice was barely a whisper. "Jump drives are offline, all of them. Every ship reports the same. Hyperspace access is denied." From the communications array came a cacophony of panicked transmissions. "Dominion's edge. This is the Nexus Fang. We're 3 million kilometers out and still locked." "Command, the entire 6th Squadron is trapped behind Veltar Prime, but we're still... Emperor's blood, we're still in its sights." "Admiral, this is Captain Vex Horth of the Crimson Saber. We've lost all tactical advantage. Whatever that thing is, it can see through solid matter, through hyperspace barriers, through everything." Koreth Val's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the impossible. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, the hegemony had encountered countless species, countless technologies. But this defied every law of physics, every principle of warfare they had ever known. "Sensor analysis," he demanded. "How is it maintaining target lock on dispersed forces?" Nextor's tentacles trembled as she worked. "Admiral, it's not using conventional targeting. The ship itself has become entangled with our fleet. Quantum entanglement on a macro scale. It knows where we are because, in some sense, we're still connected to it. That's impossible. Entanglement breaks down at... Sir, incoming transmission from the Black Ship." The voice that emerged from their speakers was human, calm, and utterly without mercy. 27 minutes remaining. Your fleet is now locked in targeting matrix. Withdrawal is still possible. Survival is not guaranteed if you remain." A new voice cut through the communications array. Captain Zex Moran of the assault carrier. Void render. "Admiral, my wing is requesting permission to engage. We have the firepower to crack that ship open like a..." The transmission cut off mid-sentence. Not from interference, not from communication failure, but because the void render simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, broadcasting to the fleet. The next moment there was empty space where 6,000 souls had been breathing. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. Just nothing. What happened to the void render? Koreth Val's voice cracked for the first time in his career. "Unknown, Admiral. Sensors show no weapons discharge from the Black Ship. The carrier simply transitioned from existing to not existing." Another transmission from the human vessel. "Warning shot. 26 minutes remaining. Warning shot." They had just witnessed the complete annihilation of a heavy assault carrier, 5 kilometers of hardened battle steel carrying enough firepower to level a continent, and the humans called it a warning shot. Koreth Val stared at the tactical display where the Black Ship sat unchanging, patient as death itself. His fleet was still there, still intact, still immeasurably superior in numbers and conventional firepower. But for the first time in his long military career, he understood what his prey had always felt, the terrible certainty that something was hunting them, and that escape was impossible. "Sir," Rimgeth whispered, "what are your orders?" The Admiral looked at the countdown timer his tactical officer had started. 25 minutes and 37 seconds until the human deadline expired. Around him, the greatest fleet in galactic history waited for his command, trapped in the targeting matrix of a single impossible ship. For the first time in hegemony history, retreat seemed like wisdom. For the first time in his life, Admiral Koreth Val was afraid. The fleet hung in space like condemned prisoners awaiting execution, each ship captain staring at their tactical displays with the growing realization that conventional warfare had just become obsolete. The black ship maintained its lock, an unblinking predator that had already demonstrated its ability to delete matter from existence with casual precision. Admiral Koreth Val's strategic mind, honed by centuries of conquest, raced through possibilities. Retreat was unthinkable. The hegemony had never withdrawn from battle, never shown weakness to lesser species. But advance meant certain annihilation, if the void render's fate was any indication. Communications, open a channel to all ship commanders, he ordered. Emergency conference. The holographic displays around his command throne flickered to life, showing the faces of his finest officers, species from across the galaxy united in their service to hegemony supremacy. But now those faces showed something he had never seen before: doubt. Captain Yeeth Neral of the heavy cruiser. Starpiercer spoke first, her scaled features grim. Admiral, my tactical officers are unanimous. This is not a ship we're facing. It's a weapon system. A single-purpose tool designed for exactly this scenario. Explain, Koreth Val demanded. Look at the design. No visible crew quarters, no supply storage, no redundant systems. That vessel was built for one function: to hold. A targeting lock and fire something that removes matter from reality. It's not a ship, it's a gun. Fleet engineer Koreth Val's multiple arms gestured frantically as he added his analysis. Admiral, the power requirements for what we witnessed are beyond calculation. To simply delete matter without conversion to energy, that's not science. That's rewriting fundamental constants of physics. Then how is it possible? Koreth Val's mandibles clicked in frustration. The answer came from an unexpected source, Dr. Eth Miran, the fleet's xenoarchaeologist, her voice heavy with terrible understanding. Because it's not their technology. The humans found something. Admiral, something left behind by the predecessors. The bridge fell silent. Every species in the galaxy had legends of the predecessors, the ancient race that had vanished eons ago, leaving behind artifacts that defied comprehension. Most were considered myths, cautionary tales about reaching too far beyond one's grasp. That's impossible, Koreth Val said, but his voice lacked conviction. The predecessor sites are all monitored, all secured. Nothing has been removed from the sites we know about, Dr. Eth Miran interrupted. But what if there were others? What if the humans found something we missed? A new voice cut through their debate, the human transmission returning, with mechanical precision. 15 minutes remaining. All hegemony vessels are advised that targeting lock cannot be broken by any known method. Withdrawal beyond heliopause boundary will result in immediate release from targeting matrix. Captain Zrin Hosk of the battleship Galaxy's Fury leaned forward in his holographic display. Admiral, that sounds like they're giving us detailed instructions for survival. Why would they do that if they intended to destroy us anyway? Because, Dr. Eth Miran said quietly, they're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to make a point. Think about it. They could have opened fire immediately, wiped out our entire fleet before we knew they were there. Instead, they're giving us time to understand what we're facing. Koreth Val's tactical mind processed this new perspective. What kind of point? That the age of hegemony expansion is over. That there are lines that cannot be crossed, barriers that cannot be broken. They're not fighting us. They're teaching us. The implications were staggering. For 3 millennia, the hegemony had built its empire on the simple principle that superior force could overcome any obstacle. They had conquered species with primitive weapons, absorbed civilizations with advanced technology, brought order to chaos through strength alone. But now they faced something that rendered their strength meaningless. A single ship that could delete their entire fleet from existence and chose not to, offering instead a lesson in humility wrapped in the certainty of annihilation. Sir, Rimgeth's voice was barely audible. New contacts on sensors. Human fleet emerging from hyperspace. The tactical display updated, showing dozens of black ships materializing throughout the system. Not approaching, not forming attack. Formations. Simply arriving to bear witness. Each one identical to the first. Each one radiating the same terrible patience. "How many?" HFY asked. 47 vessels, Admiral. All matching the profile of our instructor. The human transmission returned. "Hegemony Fleet, you are surrounded by the first expeditionary force of the Terran Commonwealth. Each vessel is equipped with predecessor targeting systems and deletion weapons. You have 12 minutes to begin. Withdrawal. This offer will not be repeated." HFY stared at the display where his mighty fleet, the pride of 17 worlds, found itself outnumbered by weapons that existed outside the normal laws of warfare. The choice was no longer between victory and defeat. It was between humility and extinction. The silence on the bridge of the Dominion's edge stretched like a held breath, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional click of Admiral HFY's mandibles as he processed the impossible situation. His fleet, a force that had never known defeat, faced weapons that transcended the very concept of conventional warfare. "Tactical assessment," he commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos in his thoughts. Rimgeth's report came with the precision of desperation. "Admiral, preliminary analysis suggests each black ship carries the same deletion weapon. If they fire simultaneously..." He paused, his scaled hands trembling over his console. "Sir, they could erase our entire fleet in a single coordinated strike. Not destroy, erase, as if we never existed." The weight of that revelation settled over the bridge crew like a funeral shroud. Death in battle was honorable, expected, even welcomed by many hegemony warriors. But this wasn't death. It was negation, the complete removal of their existence from the universe itself. Dr. Ethmiran's voice cut through their stunned silence. "Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures from the black ships that match theoretical predecessor technology. Specifically, the Vorthak Codex mentions devices that could manipulate what they called existence probabilities, the likelihood that matter continues to exist in any given moment." "Meaning?" HFY demanded, though part of him dreaded the answer. "Meaning they're not firing weapons at us, Admiral. They're changing the mathematical probability that we exist from certain to impossible. The void render wasn't destroyed. Its existence was simply recalculated to zero." Captain Yithnaral's scaled features paled as she processed this information. "That's not warfare. That's playing God with the fundamental structure of reality." Another human transmission arrived, and this time it carried additional data: star charts, tactical analyses, recorded battles. "Hegemony Command, we are transmitting documentation of our previous encounters with your expansion fleets. Review recommended before final decision." The data package uploaded to their systems despite every security protocol, inserting itself into their databases with the casual ease of absolute technological superiority. As the files opened, the bridge crew witnessed something that shattered their understanding of recent galactic history. Battle records from the Terthan system. A hegemony conquest fleet of 4,000 ships simply vanishing from space, their disappearance blamed on a navigational accident. Security footage from the Kelvac colonies showing entire planetary defense networks going offline simultaneously before their garrisons surrendered without explanation. Intelligence reports from a dozen worlds that had suddenly declared independence. From hegemony rule, their leaders speaking of changed circumstances and new realities. "By the ancestors," Captain Zrin Hosk whispered. "They've been doing this for months. Every mysterious fleet disappearance, every inexplicable colony. Rebellion, it was them." HFY studied the data with growing horror. The humans hadn't just found predecessor technology, they had weaponized it and used it to systematically dismantle hegemony expansion without firing a shot in anger. Fleet after fleet had been given the same choice his force now faced: withdraw or cease to exist. "Why show us this?" he asked aloud, though he already suspected the answer. Dr. Eth Moran provided it. "Because they want us to understand that resistance is not just futile, it's impossible. They're not conquering us. They're teaching us that conquest itself is obsolete." The human transmission continued. "Admiral Koreth Val of the Hegemony 7th Fleet, you have 8 minutes remaining. Your choice affects not just these ships, but the future relationship between our species. Choose wisdom." The use of his name sent a chill through the Admiral's carapace. They knew who he was, had probably been tracking his movements for weeks or months. This wasn't a random encounter. It was a carefully orchestrated lesson in the new reality of galactic politics. "Sir," Nextor called from her sensor station, "I'm detecting gravitational anomalies around the black ships. They're creating localized distortions in space-time. If they wanted to, they could collapse this entire system into a black hole." Koreth Val closed his 4 eyes and felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He had commanded fleets in the conquest of 17 worlds, had brought the gift of hegemony order to chaos-ridden systems across the galaxy, but now he faced a species that could simply wish his entire civilization out of existence. "Open A channel," he said finally. "All frequencies, maximum broadcast power." His communications officer complied, and Koreth Val's voice carried across the void to both his own fleet and the waiting human vessels. "This is Admiral Koreth Val to all ships. The tactical situation has evolved beyond conventional parameters. All vessels are ordered to power down weapons and prepare for withdrawal." The response from his fleet was immediate and predictable. A chorus of protests, demands for explanation, calls for him to reconsider. But underneath the outrage, he heard something else: relief. His captains were warriors, but they weren't fools. They had seen what happened to the Void Render. The human response came with mathematical precision. Withdrawal acknowledged. Targeting matrix will disengage upon crossing heliopause boundary. Safe passage guaranteed. 6 minutes remained until the deadline. 6 minutes to make the choice that would define humanity's place in the galaxy and the hegemony's acceptance of a new reality where superior firepower no longer guaranteed victory. For the first time in 3,000 years, the hegemony was about to retreat. The order to withdraw had been given, but the hegemony fleet remained motionless in space like a predator suddenly confronted with something beyond its understanding. For 3,000 years, retreat had been a concept so foreign to their military doctrine that many ships literally lacked the proper protocols for organized withdrawal from a superior force. Admiral Koreth Val watched his tactical display as his commanders struggled with the unthinkable. Ships that had been built for conquest, crews that had been trained for victory, officers whose entire careers had been defined by expansion, all faced with the reality that their enemy wasn't fighting them so much as educating them. "Admiral?" Captain Yithneral's voice cracked through the comm system. "My crew is requesting clarification. They don't understand how we can retreat from a single ship." "Tell them," Koreth Val replied, his mandibles clicking with grim humor, "that we're retreating from the universe itself. These humans have found a way to make reality negotiate." But even as he spoke, a new complication arose. Fleet Commander Vash Coram of the Assault Squadron. Crimson Talon broke formation, his heavy cruiser accelerating toward the nearest black ship. "Dominion's Edge, this is Vash Coram." His voice boomed across all frequencies. "I cannot, will not, retreat from primitives. One ship or 47, they bleed and die like any other species. Commander, return to formation immediately." Koreth Val roared. "That's a direct order." "With respect, Admiral, I follow the hegemony code. Never yield to the weak, never bow to the inferior. These humans may have stolen predecessor toys, but they're still just mammals with delusions of grandeur." The Crimson Talon and its escort ships, nearly 300 vessels, broke away from the main fleet, forming an attack wedge aimed directly at the closest human ship. Their weapons powered up, shields went to maximum, and for a moment it seemed like conventional warfare might reassert itself. The Black ship's response was immediate and terrifying. All 47 vessels turned in perfect synchronization, their dark hulls reflecting no light as they focused on the approaching squadron. Space itself seemed to thicken around them, reality bending under the weight of their attention. "Vashkoram, you fool!" Dr. Ethmeron screamed across the comm. "You don't understand what you're facing!" "I understand cowardice when I see it," the fleet commander replied. "All ships, maximum attack speed. Show these humans what happens when they threaten the hegemony." The attack squadron closed to weapons range, their combined firepower enough to crack a planet's crust. Plasma cannons, charged missile tubes loaded, energy weapons that could slice through neutronium prepared to fire. It was a display of raw, destructive power that had brought 1,000 worlds to their knees. The Black ships did nothing. "Admiral," Nextor whispered, "the human vessels aren't even raising shields. They're just waiting." Koreth Val realized, with mounting horror, what was about to happen. "Vashkoram! Abort your attack! They're letting you close because—" The Crimson Talon opened fire. Every weapon, every system, every ounce of destructive capability focused on a single Black ship. The void lit up with energy beams, exploding missiles, and particle streams that could disintegrate asteroids. The Black ship absorbed it all. Not deflected, not shielded against, absorbed. The weapon's fire simply disappeared into its hull like light into a black hole, adding to its mass, feeding its power systems, making it somehow more present and terrible than before. Then it fired back, not with visible weapons, not with energy beams or projectiles. The Black ship simply looked at the Crimson Talon, and the heavy cruiser began to come apart at the subatomic level. Not exploding, not burning, unraveling. Its hull plates separated into component molecules. Its crew dissolved into constituent atoms. Its weapon systems broke down into fundamental particles. The process was slow, deliberate, and absolutely inevitable. For 30 seconds, the Crimson Talon existed in a state of controlled decay, its crew broadcasting their terror as they watched their ship and themselves cease to exist from the inside out. When it was over, there was nothing left but empty, space, and the memory of what had been. The remaining ships of Vashkoram's squadron hung motionless in space, their crews too shocked to move, too terrified to retreat, too broken to fight. They had just witnessed the fundamental laws of physics, rewritten for the express purpose of demonstrating human superiority. The human transmission came with mechanical calm. Demonstration complete. Remaining hegemony vessels have 3 minutes to begin withdrawal. This offer will not be repeated. Koreth Val found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. All ships, immediate withdrawal. Maximum burn toward the heliopause. No delays, no questions, no heroics. This time, there was no resistance. The sight of the Crimson Talon's dissolution had shattered something fundamental in the hegemony mindset. Ships that had conquered galaxies fled like startled prey animals, their engines screaming as they raced toward the system's edge. But as they retreated, Dr. Ethmeran's voice carried across the comm with a realization that chilled every soul in the fleet. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the weapon discharge. The Black ship didn't just destroy the Crimson Talon, it demonstrated surgical control over matter at the quantum level. They could have done that to all of us simultaneously from the moment they arrived." The implication was staggering. The humans hadn't been fighting them. They had been showing restraint beyond imagination. Every moment of hesitation, every warning, every offered chance at survival had been a gift from beings who could have ended the conflict before it began. As his fleet fled toward the heliopause, Admiral Koreth Val understood that the galaxy had just changed forever. The age of conquest was over, ended not by superior force, but by the simple demonstration that force itself was obsolete. The humans had won without firing a shot in anger, and somehow that made their victory absolute. The hegemony fleet's retreat had become a rout. 12,000 ships fleeing toward the heliopause with the desperate speed of prey, animals escaping a predator they couldn't comprehend. Admiral Koreth Val stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as his once mighty armada scattered like leaves before a cosmic wind. Behind them, the 47 black ships maintained their perfect formation, making no move to pursue. They simply watched, patient as monuments, as the greatest fleet in galactic history acknowledged defeat without a proper battle being fought. Crossing heliopause in 17 minutes, Rimgeth reported, his voice hollow with exhaustion. All ships report successful disengagement from the targeting matrix. The sensation of being released from that cosmic crosshair had been immediate and unmistakable, like a weight being lifted from their souls, a held breath finally exhaled. But the psychological impact remained, the knowledge that they had been held at the mercy of beings who could edit their existence with a thought. "Admiral," Dr. Ethmaran called from her station, "I'm receiving priority transmissions from Hegemony Central Command. Fleet Admiral Gorth Hess is demanding a full tactical report." Koreth Val's laugh was bitter. "What shall I tell him? That we encountered a single human ship that made our entire fleet irrelevant? That they've weaponized the fundamental forces of reality itself?" "Sir," Communications Officer Leth Bryn interrupted. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet. They're requesting a diplomatic channel." The absurdity of it struck Koreth Val like a physical blow. After demonstrating the power to erase matter from existence, after forcing the retreat of the galaxy's most powerful military force, the humans wanted to talk diplomacy. "Put them through," he ordered. The voice that emerged from their speakers was different from the mechanical announcements they had been receiving, warmer, more human, carrying the weight of genuine emotion. "Admiral Koreth Val, this is Captain Zaris Valdane of the Commonwealth vessel Eternal Theorem. I want to apologize for the demonstration. We took no pleasure in the destruction of your ships." "Apologize?" Koreth Val's mandibles clicked in bewildered anger. "You've just revolutionized warfare itself, and you want to apologize? Because we never wanted to revolutionize warfare. We wanted to end it. Admiral, what you witnessed today was not a weapons test. It was a mercy. We could have ended this conflict before you knew we were there. Instead, we chose to give you time to understand." Dr. Ethmaran leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her terror. "Captain Valdane, the technology you've deployed, it's beyond anything in our databases. How did you acquire predecessor artifacts?" A pause, then. "We didn't acquire them, Doctor. We were chosen by them. 3 years ago, our exploration vessel discovered a predecessor installation in the Kepler void. Not abandoned, not dead, but waiting. The entities that built those ships, they've been watching the galaxy for eons, waiting for a species to evolve beyond the need for conquest." "And they chose humanity?" Koreth Val asked, his voice thick with disbelief. "They chose humanity because we were the first species to find their installation and ask not, how can we use this to conquer others? But how can we use this to protect others? The weapons you've seen today, they're not instruments of war. They're instruments of peace, designed to make violence impossible by making it irrelevant." The implications crashed over Koreth Val like a tidal wave. The predecessors, the legendary race that had vanished eons ago, had been testing species across the galaxy, waiting for one that would use ultimate power for protection rather than domination. Captain Yeath Neral's voice cracked through the calm. "Admiral, if what they're saying is true, then the predecessors. They've been judging us. All of us. And we failed." "Not failed," Captain Valdane corrected gently. You simply weren't ready. The predecessors understood that every species must pass through a phase of expansion, conquest, and dominance. It's part of natural evolution, but eventually a species must choose between perpetual war and perpetual peace. And if we choose war, HFY asked, though he already knew the answer, then you face species like us, who have chosen peace and been given the tools to enforce it. Admiral, we don't want to be your enemies. We want to be your teachers, your guides into a galaxy where strength is measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the ability to protect. The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this revelation. They had encountered not just a superior military force, but an evolutionary test administered by the galaxy's most ancient intelligence. And humanity had passed where they had failed. What happens now? HFY asked quietly. Now you return to your worlds and tell them what you've seen. Tell them that the age of expansion is over, that the galaxy has guardians now. Some will listen, some will test us as you did today. Eventually, all will understand. And if the hegemony refuses to accept this new reality, then the hegemony will discover that reality itself can be negotiated, and we've already secured a better deal. Admiral, we're transmitting coordinates for a neutral meeting point. When your leaders are ready to discuss the future of galactic civilization, we'll be waiting. As the transmission ended, HFY stared at the tactical display, where the black ships maintained their vigil. Behind him, his fleet continued its retreat toward hegemony space, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The predecessors had returned, not as conquerors, but as judges, and they had found humanity worthy of inheriting their ultimate weapons. The galaxy would never be the same. And somehow, HFY realized that might be exactly what the universe needed. 6 standard months after the incident at Veltar, Admiral HFY stood on the observation deck of Hegemony Central Command, watching as the greatest minds of 17 species struggled to comprehend reports that defied every principle of their military doctrine. The Hegemony Council chamber buzzed with translated arguments from dozens of different vocal systems. But the message was universal: disbelief, denial, and growing fear. Fleet Admiral Gorth Hess, Supreme Commander of all Hegemony forces, leaned back in his ceremonial throne, his multiple eyes focused on the tactical displays showing the locations of human peacekeeping fleets throughout the galaxy. 17 separate encounters, he rumbled in his bass voice. 17 fleets, over 40,000 ships total, all neutralized without a single human casualty. Not neutralized, HFY corrected quietly. Educated. Every fleet was given the same choice: withdraw or face deletion. Most chose wisdom, and the ones that didn't became object lessons in the futility of conventional warfare against post-physical weapons. The term had been coined by Dr. Miran in her comprehensive report on human capabilities. Post-physical weapons, systems that operated beyond the traditional relationship between energy and matter, tools that could rewrite the fundamental constants of reality itself. Council Speaker Neth Varric, eldest of the Hegemony leadership, gestured with her withered tentacles toward the star charts. "Show me," she commanded in her whisper-thin voice. "Show me what the galaxy looks like now." The holographic display shifted, revealing the current political situation across known space. What they saw was a transformation beyond imagination. The hegemony's expansion had been completely halted. Their newest conquests had declared independence under human protection, and their core worlds were surrounded by a growing network of species that had accepted the new reality. The Kelmorian Republic, HFY began his briefing, has signed a mutual defense pact with the Terran Commonwealth. The Yithrak Confederation has requested human assistance in restructuring their government. The Free Worlds Alliance has grown from 12 systems to over 300, all under the protection of the Black ships. "They're building an empire," Gorth Hess snarled. "No, Dr. Ethmeran interjected from her position at the Science Advisory Board. They're building a peace. Every species that allies with humanity retains complete autonomy, complete self-governance. The humans provide only one service: protection from conquest. The implications were staggering. In less than a year, humanity had become the de facto peacekeepers of the galaxy, not through conquest but through the simple demonstration that conquest itself was obsolete. Admiral Koreth Val, Council Speaker Neth Varrick's ancient voice carried across the chamber, you have direct experience with these post-physical weapons. In your professional assessment, what would be the outcome of a full-scale military confrontation with the Terran Commonwealth? Koreth Val had been dreading this question for months, but the answer came without hesitation. Complete annihilation of all hegemony forces within the first hour of engagement. Not defeat, erasure. They would simply edit our existence to a probability of 0. The chamber erupted in protests from military commanders who had never faced the black ships, who still believed that superior numbers could overcome any technological advantage. But Koreth Val silenced them with a gesture toward the holographic. Display. Observe, he said, calling up recorded footage from the Battle of Xerion Prime, the most recent attempt by a hegemony splinter faction to test human resolve. Admiral Krex Thon commanded 6,000 ships, including the newest dreadnoughts from our Titan shipyards. The recording played in horrifying detail. The massive hegemony fleet engaging a single black ship, their combined firepower illuminating space like a newborn star. Then the response, not weapons fire, not explosions, but simply the quiet unmaking of 3,000 vessels in perfect synchronization. Ships that had existed for centuries simply stopped existing, as if the universe had forgotten they were ever built. The remaining 3,000 ships surrendered immediately, Koreth Val continued. They were escorted to the system's edge and released unharmed. Krex Thon himself was invited aboard the human vessel for what they called a conversation about the future. What did he report? Gorthest demanded. That he had tea with beings who showed him the mathematical proofs for their weapon systems, who explained the physics of existence negation as casually as discussing the weather. They gave him a choice: return to his people as an advocate for peace or remain behind to study their technology. And he chose to stay. Last transmission indicated he was learning to see reality as the predecessors do, not as fixed law, but as negotiable parameters. Dr. Ethmeran stepped forward, her scientific instruments displaying readings that defied conventional physics. Council members, I've spent 6 months analyzing human technology. What we're facing isn't just advancement, it's evolution. They've moved beyond the limitations of energy-matter interaction, beyond the constraints of space-time itself. She activated a detailed analysis of the black ship's construction. These vessels don't operate on fusion power or antimatter. They draw energy directly from the quantum foam, from the zero-point fluctuations that underlie reality. They're not ships in any sense we understand, but rather mobile platforms for reshaping the fundamental constants of physics. Council Speaker Neth Varrick processed this information with the careful deliberation of extreme age. Dr. Ethmeran, in your assessment, could we develop countermeasures to fight beings who can change the laws of physics at will? The scientist's laugh was hollow. Council Speaker, we would need to become post-physical ourselves. We would need to transcend our current understanding of existence entirely. Then what do you recommend? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. For 3 millennia, the hegemony had known only one solution to any problem: apply superior force until resistance ceased. But now they faced an opponent for whom force was meaningless, who could delete their entire civilization with the casual ease of erasing a mathematical error. Admiral Koreth Val cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. Council members, 3 days ago I received a personal message from Captain Zaris Valdane of the Terran Commonwealth. She extended an invitation to visit their homeworld, to see what they've built with predecessor guidance. A trap. Gorth Hess snarled immediately. Perhaps. Or perhaps an opportunity to understand what we're truly facing. Koreth Val activated his personal communicator, displaying the message he had received. They're not asking for surrender, Council members. They're asking for curiosity. The message played in Captain Valdane's warm, human voice. Admiral, you've seen our weapons, witnessed our capabilities, but have you seen our purpose? We invite representatives of the hegemony to Earth to understand why the predecessors chose us and what we hope to build for all species. The galaxy is big enough for every civilization to flourish, but only if we choose cooperation over conquest. Council Speaker Neth Varrick's ancient eyes closed as she contemplated decisions that would reshape galactic civilization. Around her, the greatest military minds in hegemony history waited for wisdom that seemed impossible to find. Finally, she spoke. Admiral Koreth Val, you will accept their invitation. Take with you a diplomatic team, our finest scientists, our most open-minded philosophers. Learn what they have learned. Understand what they have become. And if it is a trap, then we face the same fate we would face in open warfare, but with the possibility of enlightenment rather than the certainty of extinction. As the council session ended, Koreth Val found himself staring at the star charts with new understanding. The age of conquest was indeed over, ended not by defeat, but by the simple demonstration that there were better ways for species to interact. The humans had been right about one thing. The galaxy was big enough for everyone to flourish. But first, the hegemony would have to learn what flourishing meant in a universe where the strongest weapons were wielded by those who chose never to fire them. 3 weeks later, the hegemony diplomatic vessel Endless Inquiry departed for Earth, carrying with it the future of galactic civilization. Admiral Koreth Val stood on its bridge, no longer a conqueror, but an explorer, preparing to learn lessons that would echo across the stars for eons to come. In the void behind them, a single black ship followed at a respectful distance, not as escort or guard, but as guide into a future where the greatest victories would be won not through the strength to destroy, but through the wisdom to protect. The predecessors had waited eons for this moment. Across the galaxy, ancient mechanisms stirred to life, preparing to welcome the next species into the fellowship of post-physical existence. The age of conquest was over. The age of transcendence had begun.